Now we are trying to discuss the 4 different types of the international strategies. Okay, there are 4 different types of strategies, and they are localization strategies, global standardization strategies, transnational strategies, and international strategies. How can we choose the 4 basic strategies in a global market? I think it depends on the purposes and what kind of the pressures you are suffer the most. Okay, which pressure you will prefer to targeting first. Okay, so that will be the reason for firms to choose their basic international strategies. Okay, there are 4 different types of the strategies. Okay, they are global standardization strategies, transnational strategies, localization strategies, and international strategies. Okay, they are differentiated by 2 different pressures. The first one is the pressure for local responsiveness. Okay, the second pressure is the cost reductions. Okay, according to these 2 different pressures, we can set up for the 4 different typologies of the international strategies: global, transnational, local, and international. Okay, so how can we choose the strategies? For example, if you are focusing on the profitability and the profit growth by reaping the cost reductions that come from the economy of the scale, learning effects, and location advantages. For example, if your main purposes is to reaping the cost reductions, that means your main target is the cost reductions. Okay, how can we reduce the cost, production cost? There are 3 main key methods for firms to reduce the production cost. They are economy of the scale. Second, learning effects. And the third, location economies. Economy of the scale means once you produce more, once your volume increased, and the cost will be lower. Okay, the phenomena is called cost, the scale economy. The second is the learning effects. You are learning by doing. You are trying to find out the best optimizations. Okay, in the productions. That is the learning effects. Okay. For example, in practices, the commonly seen learning effects come from the workers. They can assemble a very complicated machinery in the shorter time. And secondly is that the yield rate has been increased. So that means the defect rates of the products, the bad quality products, has been reduced when you are become experts, okay, in the production line. And the third one is the location economy. The location economy means you have to find out the best place in the world that are suitable for these productions. Okay, so these particular locations is benefit the whole production processes. That is what we call location economy. So you can see this. The goal is to pursue local strategies on a global scale. So therefore, it makes sense that when there are strong pressures for cost reductions and the demands for the local responsiveness are minimal. So therefore, in this circumstance, we will choose the global standardization strategies. The next strategies sometimes we choose is the location strategies. The location strategies, they're focusing on the increasing the profitability by customizing the firm's goods and the services. Okay, so they can provide a good match to taste and the preferences in the different national markets. Okay, that's what we call localizations. Okay, it makes sense when there are substantial differences across nations with regard to the consumer taste and the preferences, and where cost pressure are not too intense. Okay, because as we know, once we try to localize from country to countries, okay, the scale economy will be diminished, and also it is not good to your learning effects as well, okay, and so therefore the cost might be a little bit increased, okay. So this strategy can be chosen where the cost pressure are not too intense. Then you can choose the localization strategies, and the localization matter in this country, then you can choose that. The transnational strategies, actually it is a very complicated strategies because it tries to simultaneously to achieve the low cost strategies, okay, the low cost strategies, and differentiate, okay, across the geographical market for the local differences, okay. So that means it tries to compromise between two pressures, which is the cost pressures and the localization pressures simultaneously, okay. Once you try to reach both of them, okay, you have to get the location economy of the scale, and the learning effects, okay, and also to maintain the localizations, okay. So it will make the whole processes even more complicated. So you know because it is complicated and also it is difficult, so you also have to foster a multi-directional flow of the skill between the national subsidiary. That means the learnings, okay, the global learnings, okay, the global learnings from different countries, it also matters, okay. We can get some extremely learning knowledges from all different other countries, okay. It can be the fully shared by some national the subsidiary, okay. It only makes sense when they are both high cost pressures and high pressures for local responsiveness, because it is very difficult to achieve that. Somehow, some localized, some countries, okay, localization is a must. For example, in 1980 and 90, the Japanese markets, okay, Japan is an important country, okay. There is no major international multinational players who are able to ignore the Japanese domestic markets. But the Japanese domestic market is very different, okay, in terms of the standards and the practices are so many differences, okay, from the Western worlds, okay. So therefore, firms has to compromise, okay, between the global standardizations using the standardization the products from the United States, and just simply import it from the West to Japan, or simply to produce the identical products similar to those in the West to sell in Japan. It is not simply possible, okay. So given some important market like such as Japan, firm, okay, has to find a way to compromise in the cost pressures, because of there might be some higher competitions there, because a lot of the domestic and the international players in the Japanese markets, and also the high pressures for local responsiveness, because of the Japanese consumers are very much different, okay, from the Western consumers, okay. So once it is the case, then you can choose the transnational strategies. Okay, the next slide we are talking the international strategies. Okay, the international strategies involving you take the products you are first produced for the domestic market, then try to set food in the international markets. Okay, but with only very minimal local customizations. Okay, it makes sense when they are low cost pressures and the low pressures for the global responsiveness. Okay, if you see low cost pressures and the low pressures, okay, for the local responsiveness. For example, okay, some luxury brands like the Gucci and some high advanced technology product like the Intel CPU, okay, because they are so unified, so unique, so therefore there is no need to localize. And also it is so unique, so there is no such a major rivals there. It is a monopoly or at least oligopoly. So therefore they are not facing the low cost pressures and the local responsiveness pressures. So they can choose these strategies, okay, by expanding their international reaches, okay, selling more products in different national markets, okay, to increase their sales revenue and profitability. Okay, next I would like to talking about the evolutions of the strategies. Okay, as you see, as the competition increased, international and localizations strategies become less viable. So why is that? Because international strategies and localization strategies, okay, they ignore the cost pressures. Okay, but as you see, the world is gradually becoming much more globalized than before. Okay, at least it become economy bloc, but even it is an economy bloc, okay, there are still much more competitors than single countries. Okay, so therefore the competition has been increased from time to time. In order to survive, firms may need to shift to a global standardization strategies or transnational strategies in advance of the competitors. Okay, because as you know, the competitions, they will come no matter sooner or later. Finally, the competitions, it will come. So you have to maintain your uniqueness and also at the same time to keep the production cost as low as possible. So it become the major practices for the international businesses. So you can see, a lot of the international firms, when they set foot in an international market, they first choose the international strategies. Okay, because at that time, at their first initial stages, okay, maybe they don't care about the cost reduction pressures. They don't care about local responsiveness pressures. Okay, but eventually they will gradually moving towards the much more standardized strategies, or in order still try to maintain the localizations, but also keep the cost pressures in their minds. Try to balance two of them. And also localization companies, localization strategies, they has to balance between the transnational, the move to become transnational strategies by trying to balancing local responsiveness and cost reductions at the same time. So in the end, you see only very few international firms, they still keep the international strategies or localization strategies. Most of the firms, they already shifting to the transnational strategies and the global standardized strategies. How can it possible? For example, like the Ford. Ford, as you know, it is a car maker, right? Ford, it has a lot of the different international subsidiary. For example, like the Mazda in Japan, and the German Ford. Also the Volvo used to be using the components and the strategic alliance with the Ford. So anyway, Ford groups and it's the related companies. It is a very big market share in the international car markets. How can they maintain their transnational strategies? Very simple. They share the same components and they share the same basic module and models. For example, I don't know, have you ever noticed that the Ford car and the Mazda car, they have some very close similarities. Okay, but yes, there are a lot of the similarity. If you are a Mazda owner, you may find that the Mazda components, sometimes it can be used in the Ford's car, and vice versa. So you know that Ford, it is a company first founded in the 2 centuries ago in America. Then it started to become international firms. Okay, they set up their different subsidiaries globally. Okay, so at first Ford was using the localization strategies. Okay, so at the time Ford has many different models, more than 50 different car models. Okay, but in 1992, okay, Ford launched a program called the World Car concept. So that means Ford try to unify and standardize, okay, their car model globally. So that's the reason why after 1992, Ford, Mazda, German Ford, and Volvo, etc., a series of the Ford related the car, they started to share their common module, common model, and the common components. Okay, so therefore, in terms of the components, okay, there has been global standardized. Okay, component has been global standardized. Okay, but their brands, okay, and their outer shape are still differentiated. Okay, so they reach the localizations, local brand and the local preferences outlook, and in the components it become global standardizations. Okay, so it reach the transnational strategies by using the standardized components and the different brands and the different outlook, and then it become the transnational companies. Okay, so that is how Ford has been evolved from the localization strategies to the transnational strategies. Okay, put simple, transnational strategies, sometimes I will see it as a mindset. Okay, firm, they like to reach both in the cost reductions and the local responsiveness. There are so many different methods to reach both of them. If you possess that kind of mindset and you can successfully achieve that, then it is a transnational strategies. So the transnational strategies, they don't have a particular formats, okay, but rather it is a mindset to achieve, to compensate two pressures simultaneously.